Greetings, humans! Today we will be talking about one of the 14 regions of Arkadan. This region is by far one of my favorites. It's humid and almost everything is covered in moss. A lot of moss. Of course, I am talking about Schattevy, or the Schatten territory if you prefer. But let's start with the basics. Where is Schattevy? Well, it's pretty simple. Schattevy is located northwest from Liamo, the political union, in the center of the map. It's the only region besides the Breich that actually is touching Angel's Wind. I'm pretty sure that with that info you can see about where it is. Just look on the map, I'm sure you'll find it. Speaking of the map, you can actually see that it's one of the biggest moss forests present on Arkadan, and also the only one who is a region of its own. And speaking of moss and forests, let's talk a little bit of the climate. As I said before, the Schatten territory is quite humid. This is one of the main reasons why the vegetation is mainly made out of moss, mushrooms, ferns and lichen. And because of all this moss, a lot of humidity is trapped and released when it's hot in the sun while it's the day. And guess what this creates? Yes, fog. A lot of fog. There is always or almost always fog in Schattevy. It's also raining a lot, which contributes to the humidity of the place. It's generally quite cold also in the Schatten territories, but the people who live there don't really mind. Next up, let's talk a little tiny bit about the terrain. As you can see on the map, there's nothing that specific about Schattevy. There's not many big mountains or anything like that. It's a pretty flat region with a couple of small mountains. The only really distinctive feature about the geography would be the wall, or Wallken in the Schatten language. The name basically says it all. It's a wall. It separates the upper and the lower part of Schattevy from one another. Remember this for later, okay? Now let's go to the most interesting part. The people. What are the Schattens like? They just seem so mysterious, don't they? Well, they kinda are, honestly. Let's talk a little bit about their culture. First of all, they usually wear some very flowy clothes. Whether it is long dresses made out of thin fabric or blouses made out of very thin materials, the keyword to the Schatten clothes is flowy. The main reason is probably because of the humidity of the place, that you don't really want to wear some very heavy clothes that can get all soaked up. Now I got an interesting subject. What do the Schattens believe? Well, first of all, let's talk a bit about the religion. They do not believe in a god, but they do believe in some divinities. To be more precise, two specific types of divinities. Both of them were never named by the Schattens, but for the sake of this video, I will refer to them as the Mott people and the High Mott. The Mott people are basically a species that inhabits Schattevy. They're usually more present in the vast territory. They're seen as a form of divinity by the Schattens. Not the highest divinity, but still a divinity. As for the High Mott, it's a bit different. The High Mott is seen as a bigger type of divinity, I suppose. It is not a god though. Just know that. It is usually represented by a person with moth wings instead of eyes. This entity usually has very short hair and has markings on their forehead. I might make a more in-depth video on the religion, but that's all you need to know for now. And this brings us to one of my favorite parts: gender beliefs. On Earth, there is a very binary gender system, but in Schattevy, it's a lot different. There are no concept of strict gender. By that I basically mean that the Schattens do not have any labels on gender. Instead of using any labels, they actually use a very interesting substance that is a mixture of water and ashes from the black deserts, or the brushes if you want. And basically they use this substance as paint, or more of makeup. They use this makeup as a sort of self-expression. They will put it in certain patterns on their face to represent how they feel, or more of what they feel like, what represents them. Schattens who use this substance are called strays. The Schattens also have a very interesting social class system. All of the population is equal, besides 5 people, who are called, well, the 5. These Schattens were chosen by all of the other Schattens by voting. The 5 can be changed by Schatten people if ever the majority of them thinks it's the right thing to do. But what do the 5 selected Schattens even do? Well, they're basically leaders, but not in the way that a lot of people think about leaders. They are not there to control everything, they're there to serve the population. If ever the Schattens complain about something or think that something needs change, for example, they will say it to the 5. So basically the job of this sort of council is to try to make compromise and make sure that the population stays happy and feels fulfilled. And that's the basis of the Schatten social classes. But there are some people in the Schatten nation that don't agree with this system. But these people are always free to leave. In Schattevy there is nothing forcing you to stay, or an obligation for you to stay. If you don't agree with something, you can either try to fix it or you are free to leave. That's why most of the population seems quite balanced. The Schattens are very interesting people and I really like their culture. This was a very short video to try explaining an entire nation and territory, but I will probably make more videos about Schattevy since it's basically one of my favorite nations, as I said before. If you have any comments or things to say, or even things you would like to know about Schattevy, just let me know in the comments. I will gladly respond to you. I will not promise you anything, but there are great chances that the next nation I will talk about will be Zorn, so keep an eye out for that one. This pretty much wraps it up, so have a nice day, week, month, and year, and may your destinies cross again.